You're listening to A Quality Podcast with your hosts, John Thacker Jr. and Jake Harrell.
I don't think you can't kind of launch into that sort of big state thinking stuff until you've taken away what I call the white noise, the sort of the day-to-day rumblings and all of that. We've got to have some sort of calmness in that space. But I think it's the early storytelling going, we will start here, and it might not be what you want to achieve, but we've got to get the collective on board to get there.
And welcome everybody to A Quality Podcast Season 4. I am happy today to be joined by Rob Bull from New Zealand, Plexus Consulting. Rob, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Good. Sunday afternoon, and it's summertime for me, so always happy.
All right. Slightly jealous there. So New Zealand, that's a continent off the coast of Australia.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, just as same as America's just another sort of territory of Canada, I think. Yeah.
Well, it's great to have you on the show. I'm not familiar with the lean consulting world in New Zealand, so it's always great to have, some new experiences and perspectives. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that to get started?
Yeah, I guess it's a bit of part of my background as well. Is certainly lean in New Zealand is, I guess, in business in general, is always a few years, and some people say decades behind some of the rest of the world, really. But because we're predominantly a SME, so small, medium businesses, about 85% of our GDP is made up of SMEs. And many of those are 20 people or less staff and organizations. So I think when it comes to lean, continuous improvement, and all of those other terms that we flip-flop between, it gets tough because the flexibility you have to put time aside while still keeping the business as usual going, that's the barrier that I get caught up mostly with. The problems are the same. I've talked to my good colleague, Paul Dunlop, which I know you've talked to. We catch up regularly, and we always agree, dumb shit's happening all over this place. It's just a different scale.
Yeah, we're planning on starting a consulting business. I mean, Paul and I, we're going to call it Better Call Paul for all of your lean problems. So I think that is a great topic to kind of dive into a little more. And I have some thoughts on it. And that is, scalability and the difference when you're doing continuous improvement, between a small enterprise and a giant car manufacturer, for example. And to give you a little bit of my background, I've done greenfield startups with, 10 people. And I've run 2 million square foot operations with hundreds of people. So I have a range of experiences, big corporations, privately held companies, small, medium, and large. And so I've gotten to see, one, how different people do the same things differently, but then also the scalability limits in both directions for companies trying to improve. So why don't we start there with small business and continuous improvement?
I guess it's the mindset is the problems are raised up more acutely with small business. I guess, in the enterprise, it can be hidden for quite a while, and then it gets almost, I guess, culturalized. It becomes part of the culture before sometimes the C-suite gets it. And I guess for me, it'd be interesting to see what your experience is too, but the small business, you tend to find the owner who is the boss, who is the manager, who's the ops manager, They're by the time they ring you, they're pretty frazzled out, and their sort of headspace is not. You almost need to be the psychologist first and the counselor first before you work on continuous improvement. So yeah, so it's a pretty slow start, I think, just to get that culture, that sort of confidence right first, that they have made the right call, ringing this weird guy up who rocks up in orange shoes. Yeah, so that's I think for me the first and fundamental part of working with small businesses is just being that extra support and coach for the leader owner quite often.
Right. So some of the larger companies have a whole uh, silo of the business dedicated to this sometimes. And I've had conversations about this before. I don't think that's a great model, but it's common in the United States.
Huh.
But certainly with smaller businesses, the leaders, I guess, they're wearing a lot of hats.
Yep.
I remember paying construction invoices, trying to find suppliers overseas, while coaching somebody because he just had a new baby and doesn't know how to come to work on time. You know, and then you try to add on top of that, it can be really challenging.
And they get so busy that, like, I hopped on a plane and traveled down to a small business, to an owner, and he kind of a really successful engineering business. He was servicing a lot of blue chip clients, and at the top of his game. And he rang me up, and you could hear him just breaking, going, "It was like I woke up one day and everything was wrong, and all of a sudden its quality's poor. People just don't give a hoot, all of those things." He goes, "Where did I go wrong? It was a great business." And then in a space of 2 years, he blinked. And because you're so in it, they forget to work. Um, sort of on it, all of those cliches. So it's a disappointing story, but it just happens too often, I guess, for those small owners who are just blinkered by chasing that hustle, next sale, next product out, that next service, and they forget to just pause, slow down, to go faster, all the stuff that we know, but it takes ages for us to convince them that that's the way to go.
Yeah, part of the challenge is the better way, accepting that there is a better way, changing your mindset and then your behaviors, your habits as a leader, something that I had to develop, and am
Mm,
still developing over many years. And there's sort of an interplay. You have a company culture that values certain things, and we all want to be valuable to the company. And at the sort of simplest psychological level, make the boss happy, right? So
mm,
if the boss comes over and says, "Hey, I don't want any more time card adjustments," well, you're going to put effort into and energy into making sure that doesn't happen, right? Maybe at the expense of something else. And then over here, you have kind of the way that the individual is conditioned. If you bring someone in to the organization, and that rubs off a little bit into the culture as well, right? Depends on the personality. Some people are a little more opinionated or forceful.
mm.
So there's an interplay between the two. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we tend to do what makes others, especially important and powerful people in the organization, happy. Fair?
Yeah, I think it's keeping it fair, and also because we were just talking just before we started around the limited sort of supply of people, particularly at the moment in New Zealand. Bosses don't want to piss off their staff at the fear that they'll just walk out down the road and get another job somewhere else, and then they've just exacerbated the problem that they've got, right? So they're walking on eggshells. Oh, we don't want to tell them that they're doing something not quite to our standard, because that will annoy them, and they're gone. So it's yeah. I do feel for business owners when it goes through that, because I don't know. I've talked to many HR sort of consultants, and I don't know if there's a right or wrong way to approach that.
Yeah, it's a challenge, and it's one that at least in the United States we haven't handled very well, and that is the learned skill of dealing with people.
Mm,
Um, I was talking to a couple of guys, and one of them is a middle-aged college grad business leader. The other one is nearing retirement, 45 years in a single industry, more blue collar type. And we were having this conversation about what gets taught in school and learned in school. And some of it's good, but we noted with some chagrin that psychology is not a required course in most business schools, which is fascinating because it's the centerpiece of everything we do in business, but especially with employee relations. Now, we happen to have access to the job relations part of training within industry, or TWI, that
Yeah.
was developed in World War II. And that can be a real shortcut. We don't have to reinvent the wheel or think through it too hard. We can sort of copy and paste there a little bit. But just in general, how do I talk to somebody about this?
Yeah.
Right?
It's interesting you say that because my partner, she does consulting for education, so schools, middle leadership, and teachers, and school leadership. And she's awesome at coaching, coaching and coaching. So I often get her in to talk to my clients because they don't know how to have those conversations. They don't know how to have what we'd probably call as sort of Gemba questions, open-ended. It's more of that blue collar, roll up your sleeves. This is how I want to do it. Why can't you understand my way of doing it? And it's the right way. So just having that skill set, because it is very much the classic, they were the expert, they're the technician, all of a sudden they're becoming sort of the entrepreneur and that leadership. And I guess part of it, there's no one fits all solution to it. But in New Zealand, I don't know what it's like in the States, but to start up a business, you just put a sign outside and next day you're going. You register, get your New Zealand business number, and that's it. There's no other requirements. So it's so easy just to go from that technician to that business owner with no skill development requirements to achieve being a good leader.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I think it's a gap to fill, and there's also a little bit of like a poisoning the well going on, I think, which is we have so much access to information, on YouTube, on the
Oh,
internet.
yeah.
Um,
Everyone's an
and
expert.
yeah, and 90+% of it is hogwash. It's just for sales. I'm trying to sell ad space on this channel. Um, there's a lot of good work out there. And
Yep.
it's funny you mentioned education because that is part of the educator's curriculum, right? It's learning how to communicate and deal with different types of people and so on and so forth. But I just wonder as we sort of move forward in this century, if that's not going to be a critical skill for business leaders. Some of the technical skills in the past, maybe you were a manufacturing firm, you made stuff, maybe you made vehicles, airplanes or something, scary and dangerous. The most important thing was the engineering skill and knowledge. And my grandfather, for example, was an aerospace engineer. And part of his job was catching mistakes because you don't want people to die. And you're designing airplanes with a slide rule, right? Well, today, Google could probably tell you the right shape for that wing. Sorry to all my engineering friends out there. I'm not trying to devalue all the hard work that you do. Right? But one thing that Google hasn't caught up with yet is how to talk to people. So maybe
Yeah.
that Chat GPT thing will come through. Who knows?
It's all over the place. It suddenly swarmed through the thing. I think the other one too to really throw this one out is that tall poppy syndrome. I don't know what it's like in the States, but sort of that humble Kiwi New Zealand kind of approach is, and it's a perverse way. I've been having multiple conversations with friends over the last few weeks around this. Is we don't want to be seen as successful or running a great business,
Hmm.
and people throw throw the stones at the successful business until they're really awesome, then they'll get behind it, right?
Yeah.
Where and why it's perverse is like we love our sports in New Zealand just like a lot of other countries, and we expect excellence from all our sports people. Come to the Olympics, we expect a few gold medals in rowing and yachting, certainly our rugby and all the other sports that we do. And we'll cut them down when they don't achieve excellence. But it's quite the opposite in our real life world. And
Sure.
I've just been pondering over the summer around it, and it's just like, why don't we bring that excellence all the way into our business? Why don't we celebrate even owners having a go at it? No, we've got excellent, awesome businesses out there. We've got massive examples, but that they had a tough time getting to that point. Peter Jackson, who was he to think he could be successful being a movie producer based in New Zealand? Now he's collecting all the gongs and all the silverware. Everyone's going, "Oh, we always knew about that. We knew he was good." It's like, why kick him when he was early in his career? It's crazy.
Mm. And who's that other gentleman? Is it Taiki Waititi?
Taika Waititi, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. He's doing
great.
okay.
Yeah, great filmmaker. I enjoy his work. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, no, it's a great question. We definitely have some of that. It kind of depends on the industry, and I guess like in the software world, some of the tech world. Um,
yeah.
in the U.S., it's a big thing to like pretend you're a big thing, and get a round of seed money and spend all of it on like marketing and slick productions and all of this. Um, but in a lot of other industries, particularly where people are making things or building things or fixing things, there's a lot more of a kind of glance over your shoulder. Like I don't want to be the head sticking up, and
Yeah.
I don't want to be a target for people. Um, I see that. I had a nicer car. I got rid of it. I drive a Forerunner now, Toyota Forerunner, with some slight modifications for my off-roading enjoyment. Uh, but but it just fits better in the parking lot. I work at a factory. There's a lot of pickup trucks and SUVs,
Sure.
those kinds of vehicles, to where my fancy fast sedan didn't match, right? So you'll see a lot of this, people trying to fit in and covering up excellence to some extent. Not,
It's
you know,
it's funny that you use a car because I brought a new car last year. Business was going well, and I had sort of like a older little sort of mini SUV, and I was like, oh, I just want to get a nice. I drive lots of miles, hours in the car. But I took about a month, and close clients that I built up a strong relationship. I bring up the photos and going, "What would you think if I drove up in this? Would you think I'm an absolute dick or what?" And I just go, "Mate, just do it. You're working hard for us all. Just But I took a month to get confirmation from clients and other people going, "Well, I look like a complete jerk turning up in a nice late model BMW.
right, right.
It's not the expensive one either, but it looks nice." But I really had to think about it rather than do I just buy a Corolla and just get in there under the radar?
Yeah,
It's
no, it's
crazy.
a real thing, right? Um, so yeah, the challenges for small scale, um,
Yeah.
for the small scale business, right? And a consultant in the small business space has to behave a certain way and have certain knowledge base. If you're consulting with large corporations, international corporations, you have to have a completely different approach. But let's set the consulting and consulting skills aside for a second and talk about the businesses and the small businesses.
Mm.
So there are some things that have to scale for the company to grow, but I'm a little more interested in something that I've seen over and over, which is the failure of smaller companies to implement continuous improvement, Kaizen, any form of lean. Um, and here's what I've noticed. I've noticed that many of them are essentially trying to copy Toyota or TPS or lean, um, because they see it as a set of interlocking tools and
Mm.
philosophies. Um, I'm not sure they get the philosophy, and so they don't know how to scale it down, right? It's just too much. Like I can't even pay the people you're telling me I need to pay to do this, right? Because we don't have the skill in house, but also all of the recommended tools and structure and pull production and all of that. Um, what do you think about that? What have you seen?
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword because, certainly when I promote my work, it's similar stuff, same problems, different organization, different businesses. So you're pretty much using the same tools. I know, going back to Paul, he does the same. It's your team boards, your visual management. We talk about 5S and all that because it's so much the basics to try and get get the momentum going and all of that kind of stuff. So that's all people see. So that's all of what they think. But yeah, there is, the massive gains with the overall mindset and the value chain sort of the helicopter viewpoint of how it all ties in together. But once they see that and they make some improvements and they might have small shareholders, yep, we've done that. So what are you still doing here?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
like, yeah, so it's that double-edged sword is we're so far around integrating sort of CI mindset around it, our whole SME culture, and sectors is once you do the basics, I think they've achieved it because that's all of the examples that they've seen. Um, there are only, certainly in New Zealand, only a real small handful, I could probably name on the top of my hand some of and they tend to be the larger organizations, but there's some smaller who have done it well, who are continuing to do it well. But because of that sort of that humbleness, we don't talk about it, we don't shout about it, and so no one actually knows that they're there. I live about an hour south of Auckland, and I can drive down the main street in our industrial suburbs and point to you where there's some world-class operations going, but no one even knows. So I think it's the role modeling of the basics. So that's the expectation. So when you actually start talking about all the other stuff, or sort of your management structure and meeting your information flow and all of that, they start looking at you as a great big tree hugger. It's all just becomes a theory, and this all soft stuff comes in where they just want to be all told to clean up their workshop, and that's it.
yeah, yeah. There's um, I think, a gap in the United States, at least, where there is a cadre of folks that understand respect for people as be nice. Well, look, I shouldn't have to tell you to be nice to people. We do sometimes, uh, especially over here. Sometimes
Some people need to
that's
be reminded.
some people need to be reminded, but that's not what respect for people really means. Respect for people in aggregate as well as the individual. Um, I believe that's one of Walmart's three core values: is respect the individual, which is important, but respecting humanity in the
Mm.
aggregate is also important. I can respect you as an individual and my coworker while doing things as a company that's bad for the species. There's a difference there. Um, but in my experience, respect for people in lean refers to essentially training, educating, empowering, and supporting the people doing the work to uncover opportunities for improvement and make those improvements semi-autonomously, right? Um, so that, I think, has been one of the very large hurdles for small companies that I've worked with. Um, and it's funny because for most of them, like that, they're already doing that. Like they're a small company, and I'm thinking of one client in particular that has like 10 employees. I'm like, you guys are already doing this. You just don't have like the system or the shared understanding for it to work well. But when that breaks, somebody fixes it, right? Somebody has to have a marketing plan. Somebody has to get designs approved and that sort of thing. So you're fixing problems all the time. There's not enough of you for you not to be doing this, right?
Yeah, so to me, it sits in three scenarios. It's like they're doing it, but they haven't joined the dots that that's what it is. They are
Mm,
expecting it something. No, it can't be that easy. It can't be that. It's got to be a lot more difficult. It has to be. What's that magic soup that you're telling us? I'm going, no, you're doing it. You just. And the cool thing is, you're not using all the fancy words. You're not talking in Japanese. All of those type of things, and that's okay. Just do it your way, and we'll frame it and put a bow tie on it, and it will be good. So you got that. Then you got you get down and engage the staff who are doing and they're fixing. Oh, I don't want to tell them that the boss's drawings are crap, or his son is the laziest person in the office, or because you got those dynamics. Most of them are all small towns, so they just don't want to raise the issues and feel like they're the prickly person in the company. And then you get the last one, which is probably about 25%. And you could just see everyone just go, oh, thank you. We've been dying for this opportunity, because the ops manager's been running around trying to put out all the fires. Now we can put them out. And I'll walk into a factory, and you know what it's like. And they'll go, come over here, Rob, come have a look at what I've done for the last month. And they're proud as punch. But all they needed to do is be given that sort of that green light. Just do it. One of the best stories I ever did, I was doing some work at one of the local universities in the support teams, the professional staff behind the scenes. And I knew one of these team leaders were a little unsure about the effectiveness of CI. And they said, oh, I just can't see it working in an office admin environment. The classic, no, that's for the guys holding the tools and making stuff. So I walked in, and unfortunately they had the meeting in a lecture hall. So they're all banked up, and then I'm down the bottom like the lecturer. And they're all just sort of sitting there going, what's this guy going to tell us? It's not going to help. I just turned around. I just said, totally unprofessional. I just said, what's pissing you guys off? Here's a whole lot of post-it notes, one thing that's pissing you off each. And in 5 minutes, they had 3 or 4 in front of them. I said, right, all pick them up, a team of about 15, throw them on the wall, put them all on the wall. And as I was leaving, and they were expected this to be an hour meeting, as I was leaving, I said, pick one, and I'll come back next week and see how you're going. Just fix it. Don't care which one. And they just went, is that it? I went, that's it. You don't, yes, you can have all the fancy stuff. We can assess, and we can do this, and we could do it, but if you want to break it down, be simple, do that. And in about 20 minutes, I'd left, and I was just like, what? Keep it simple.
Yeah. Additionally, for me, something that I keep experiencing is small businesses struggling because they don't, and sometimes can't, think in process mindset, right? So, and it becomes a challenge because, we'll just use the example of a production facility. We're making a widget, and I can have all of the isolated improvements I want. I have tools, they're the right size, they're not broken, they're in a shadow board. That's great. And it makes my life easier. It doesn't improve the business necessarily, right? And getting that mindset shift has proven monumental. In some cases, impossible for me. That might be a skill level thing for me, but business owners that just can't understand process mindset and sort of understanding the flow, the value chain.
I think
business
that's part of storytelling, really. That's part about my role as storytelling. Hey, we're going to start here, but we're just using it to get some quick wins under the belt, getting the confidence of the team, getting their sort of noise taken care of. But there's a longer game. But you can't do that sort of value stream improvements that will benefit the business that you're saying. I could be told wrong, and I'm wrong quite often, as my partner would keep reminding myself. But I don't think you can't kind of launch into that sort of big state thinking stuff until you've taken away what I call the white noise, the sort of the day-to-day rumblings and all of that. We've got to have some sort of calmness in that space. But I think it's the early storytelling going, we will start here, and it might not be what you want to achieve, but we've got to get the collective on board to get there. And it might look a little bit scattergunnery-ish, and we're going all over the place, but it's really just to get the momentum, just to get the confidence, and then we'll converge into that true north, and then we can have those conversations. And it's the ones who see that long game, and I'd say that's still a small part of the bell curve. Then they get it; they're in for the long haul. The ones who can't see the wood for the tree, and why are you doing this when I want that fixed over there? Don't worry, we'll get there. But I think it's us storytelling right at the start.
Yeah, I like that. I like that approach. You talked about the white noise. Uh, what I found is for the people doing the work, and I guess I should preface this a little bit. I work with companies that are looking for specific outcomes, and sometimes the specific outcome, is like financially related or something. It's not really Kaizen they're looking for, right? So I'll help with that, as
Yep.
well. Um, but anything that involves the employees improving the work, which I think should be, it's funny to me because we talk about this as a um, outcome that we're looking for, right? The people doing the work own it, right? It's really about buy-in and that sort of thing, and you're doing the improvement and all of that. Um, I I don't know, how many companies really want that. When I start to dig in, they'll say, "Well, I want to be a lean company." Well, that's like servant leadership. No, you don't. You want the outcomes or the
Mm.
benefits, but you don't actually want to do
They
it
don't want to
because
give it
it's
up. And that goes back to the small owner, right? The technician, and particularly and the sort of Kiwi mindset for us is, I'm the owner. I've got to know. I've got to be the knower of all and the expert of all and all of that. Just to give that away, yeah. Sometimes you just can't.
yeah, yeah.
Right
But
person, wrong time.
for sure. But for the companies that are trying to build Kaizen or continuous improvement, um, what I found is if you can start out with removing all of the nuisances that keep people from being focused on the work, it goes a really long way. You
Yep.
know, so it's sometimes super not popular because people think I'm trying to milk them or something like that. But you need a bigger break room. You need more microwaves and televisions in the break room. You need more parking spots. And why does that person have to walk a quarter mile to work? Because the parking place is way out there. And by the way, you don't have any handicapped spots. And all of the little things that
The things that piss them off.
yeah. So that by the time they're here running their machine and trying to they already have a list of 6 things that they're upset about. You know.
Oh, look, you walk in and we don't have enough box cutters. What do you mean you don't have enough box cutters? Oh, we're trying to get sharp blades, real small stuff. And sometimes you just go down the hardware store and buy it and bring it back and go, here you
Mm,
are.
yeah.
Uh, just get it done. So absolutely.
Yeah, I think Jake has a story. I'm gonna mistell it, but there was a plant where they weren't wearing their bump caps. So it's not a hard hat, but we
Yep.
call them bump caps. But it's just a shell. It provides some protection, but it's not rated like a hard hat. Um,
Sure.
so they weren't wearing this PPE. Well, let's ask the five whys. They're not wearing it because they can't find it. They can't find it because they're on a special shelf somewhere that's across the plant. But they're over there because they were taking them home and forgetting to bring them back in the morning, and so somebody came up with a solution for that, and it ended up not working. Kind of backfiring. Um, those are the kind of just little things, little foxes spoil the grapes, right? That by the time I start work, I'm already in a foul mood.
Yep.
This is work. This is a dungeon. Whatever. And as unpopular as it might be for the people controlling the purse strings, go ahead and fix that stuff first, and then
Yep.
then you'll have the
100%.
receptive. Yeah,
Stop doing the little dumb stuff and then we can get on to the cool stuff. Right. And yeah, I think for me, that's definitely the storytelling earlier on. And yeah, hopefully, well, that's the sales pitch. You got to get them over the line. If they can't see that, are they the right people that you want to be working with? Because, and so that weeds that whole story out quite quickly, right?
Yeah, I think those are good points, Rob. As we transition, I'd like to kind of talk a little bit about unique problems that small business owners should be aware of. So we've worked with small businesses, both of us. Um, for my part, like as an employee, we call them W-2s up here because that's the tax code or whatever. So when we say W-2, that's like I'm an employee.
Right.
If we say 1099, that's like a contract employee, so more
Sure.
like a consultant. Yeah. So I've been a W-2 for small companies and small startups. Um, so advice for small business owners. They're watching this show. They're interested. I know I need something. I really like this continuous improvement thing.
Mm.
Um, where should they start? What should they be aware of?
Um, I think start by calling around, talking, and doing a bit, but doing your own homework. I mean, we talked about googling stuff. A lot of stuff around this space is going to be fairly consistent. So do your own homework and give it a try because it isn't rocket science. You don't need consultants to start becoming a better business. Just start wherever you feel comfortable, and just see what the response is from your staff. So try the process yourself. Um, but I think definitely need to get the support team in around you because it is a hard, long grind to do it well. Um, and I guess don't see the consultant as a cost. It is definitely an investment. I know that's a cliche, but when you charge a few thousand, but you can increase the sort of turnover by 20-30%, particularly in a small business, it's chump change, right? So don't get freaked out about the funding or the pay, and just make sure you get the right person. So talk to people, see what they're like, talk to other people. But because they're going to be your support person for a long time if you're serious about doing this. And the other couple of ones that I would say is be prepared to put at least 2 years into this because this takes, you think how long it will take, double it, then double it again, right? Because we're dealing with people, it is going to take longer. It could take 3 to 4 months just to get your team on board. So whereas you think it might be one speech on the soapbox, no, you're going to do that for 3 or 4 months before they start hearing the true story. So yeah, be prepared for the long game. So get ready for that. And the final one too is be prepared what I call the lost generation of work. So when you start this, you will have a certain amount of current work on your plate that will be late. If you're always missing deadlines or you're always not hitting your quality results, when you start, there will be a generation that might even get worse. When you're trying to wedge this continuous improvement thing in and putting time aside for that, you will still continue to miss deadlines. So talk to your clients going, hey, we're going to change things up a bit. There will be an impact short term, but hopefully over the next couple of months, we'll start making those gains. So be prepared for running over the gravel before you hit the tarmac. So that would be my sort of advice. It's not all of a sudden in 2 weeks' time it's suddenly smelling of roses. It's
Yeah,
hard work. It's
yeah,
like I use sporting analogies a lot, but we're in the new year. It's like going to the gym. You haven't been to the gym for 6 months, 8 months, or years if you're like me. The first time you go and the first couple of times you go, it's painful. It hurts. You can't do a lot of it. You stop it after half an hour and going, this is dumb. Why am I doing this? And I could be sitting back home, starting the barbecue and having a beer. What am I doing? So starting that CI journey is very much like going back to the gym after a long break, or if you've never been. You've got to get through that pain. Your legs hurt the next day. Yep, because you're using muscles that you've never used before.
Yeah.
But
And
it will become easier, right?
at my age, you don't even have to go to the gym to do that.
Hey,
Uh,
I'm turning 50 this year. I know what that's like.
yeah, I had well, we call him a Charlie horse. I don't know the right word, but a cramp in my calf while I was sleeping
Mm,
the other night, and got no sleep. And then I limped the whole next day and felt sorry for myself. So
oh,
that's where I'm at. Um, I think those are really good words for small business owners that are looking to take that step. And I appreciate you sharing that. One of the things that we value on a quality podcast, the goal of this podcast and what Jake and I do is to spread as much knowledge as we can around the world to make it a better place.
sure.
We don't really we don't hoard anything, hoping we can capitalize on it later. I think the internet has killed that anyway, right? Um,
Yeah.
but we want
There's
everyone
no
to
IP left. We
right.
can't trademark anything, right? It's all out there. The
Yeah,
secrets are
nothing.
there. Just go and look.
Yeah. Well, but you can't patent dealing with people well. So there we go. Back to that. So I'm gonna talk through what I do with small businesses and new
Mm,
clients. Usually not the larger ones because they've already done something like this, but definitely the smaller ones. Now, I don't know if anybody listening to this can execute this, right? Which is why people like Rob Bull exist. So give them a call, Plexus Consulting. You guys have the internet in New Zealand?
yeah, no, we've got to get the sheep on the treadmill to get the electricity going. But no, we get it occasionally.
Well, we in Pennsylvania get it occasionally. So you're
Yeah.
joking, but 2 miles that way is all farms. So we happen to be in the right position from the sun to have this call right now. But it is a roll of the dice. But on a serious note, um, I'm going to share what we do, and I would encourage anybody listening, try this out. If you don't know how to do it, that's okay. There's plenty of people willing to help. So the first thing that we do is we go into an operation, and we set aside, for the time being, we set aside all of the financials, right? Purchasing and selling, essentially, and we look at the value creation process. So in one of your traditional like manufacturing roles, that's from the raw materials to the finished goods. Right? For a warehouse, it might be stock received to stock shipped. And the first thing that we do is we document every single step to get it out the door from door to door in a swim lane map. Right?
Mm,
We don't use the value stream map. I'm not a fan of that tool, but we can get into that in a completely different podcast. But in a swim lane map,
yep.
everything. And that is the primary purpose of that is to educate the entire leadership team. And I will tell you, to this day, I have not met a single company, nobody that I've worked with, has there been one person on the team that knew that whole thing. Not once has that happened. So it's an educational tool for the
Mm,
leadership team. And sometimes it's very eye opening and even distressing for the leadership team to see, are you kidding me? All we're doing is, and there's 37 steps, to get there. Okay, well, that's where we're going to start. That allows us to do several really high value added things. First, we always print it out in color and laminate it and put it on the wall of the main office or the war room if you have one or what have you. It needs to be visible and out there. But we'll do every time there's a problem, we just circle which step it occurred in, right? If you start to see a heat map, like we keep circling the same step, okay, we know where the problem is, right? Another thing that we'll use it for is we can do time studies. right, on the different steps, um, and figure out like where the time is going. And you might have 47 steps, and 40 of them take 10 to 15 seconds, right? Okay, well, let's look at the other 10 kind of thing. So just having that visual map provides a blank canvas for management to use it for whatever they want. You know, this is the department that has the most issues. Let's look at their steps. This is the department the product spends most time in. Let's look at what they're doing, and so on and so forth. And also, the one of the first things that we look at is signal to do work. So each step has to be executed by somebody. What is their signal to do
Mm.
work, right? And what we found is, you've got the like sort of the process step here, and then the different actors here in the swim lane map, right? And what I found is when it switches lanes, like it goes to somebody else, well, that's a potential failure mode. And when it switches departments, it gets more dramatic. And if that department is on the other side of the building, it's even more dramatic, right? And you would not believe the number of times I've watched this process, and it's just going like this. And then between this step and this step, there is no signal to do work. The only reason this person knows to do work is they've been doing it for 25 years. Like, well, if I go walk over into that corner, I'll see a pile of stuff. And that tells me that something's going on. And so now I know to go do this job over here. Right. So that's what I would recommend for small businesses. If you can do that on your own, just go do it. The amount of learning you'll get out of it is great. If you can't do it on your own, don't worry about it. There's plenty of folks that will help you do it, but I would start there, and that'll give you a good grasp of kind of what you're up against as you move forward.
Yeah, and like I love doing sort of like swim lane process, sort of mapping out. I just think of a couple of examples. One, don't underestimate the conversation that happens while you're putting it on. Two, always use super sticky post-it notes. But yeah, the conversations are quite valuable. The outcome that you get, the structured, concrete, binary outcome, that's awesome and measurable too, which is great. Because you go back to it, 6 months time, what's changed and what's not. And I love that heat map example. That's awesome. But it's the soft stuff as well, the conversations. Like I did a very similar exercise last week with a client, and the actual process they were pretty solid on, but the amount of opportunities that came out, like a team of about 5 or 6, leadership team, we came out that we're not changing the process at all. But how they're doing it and the quality, we had a whole lot of post-it notes because I always color code the steps are in one color post-it. Even the information flow requirements are on another post-it, so you can visually see what. Otherwise, it gets really messy and it's hard for me to keep up. So I want to simplify it myself. But then I always keep sort of like the orange or the bright pink post-it notes for all the good ideas that are coming up. So while they're talking, I'm writing these down and throwing them up relative to the process. And at the end of the day, you're picking out, a couple of dozen of these post-it notes going, here's your journey. We'll take photos, we'll do all of that. So don't underestimate the conversations, the people side of it, right? Heaven forbid, we're talking about people far too often. But I went through that exercise once early on with a client, and we got to the end, and the GM suddenly popped up in a swim lane to sign off. And I just looked at him and I said, you're not appearing from the start to the 99th step. Why? And quickly got him out. It just sticks out. You can see, why is one person being involved? Let's upskill the other person or give them the authority to sign off. Done. You just
Right.
want to see the money in the bank. That's your role as the general manager, right? You don't need to see that the certification's been signed off or whatever the documentation was, but keep it, just
So
simplify the amount of people in the process.
do you run out of colors in your sticky notes when you come across a company that runs their business on SAP and Excel and Google Sheets and Power BI.
Uh, actually, funny you say that. There's a couple of things around this. But the team that I was working with last week, it was particularly because they have multiple systems, and I'm bringing in an IT expert to come and help simplify that because they're not even at SAP level. They are at they've got a basic CRM and a whole lot of Google Docs. And I've been in the management meetings when they go, oh, and they're clever. They're clever people. So they've made all of these things talk to each other somehow. But my gosh, it's frustrating. So, so we're at the process of just simplifying the information flow so it doesn't slow the process down, because I've got to look at this tab that hooks onto that sheet, and that tab it's
Yeah, yeah,
bonkers.
yeah. We're
So,
often the victims of our own ingenuity. I all the time have to help people deconstruct something that's been built over 15 years of clever people fixing problems. And I'm like, you know what? That's the American spirit. Good for you. You go, buddy. But
oh,
let's simplify it.
yeah, absolutely. These guys, and the owner was in another city, and he was going to fly up the next day, and we were going to defer the meeting so he could be part of it. I said, no, don't, because he was the one that sets up the Google sheet. He knows how to write apps, so the field team have the field app. And I'm going, no, we want to quietly. I just want to get rid of those. So let's not have him in the room. Oh, okay.
So let's switch gears here quickly as we wrap up the podcast. Tell me about one or two things that you really love about what you do.
Yeah, I guess it was even from the start of my career. I'm a health professional. I learned lean in the health sector. Quality really went back to TQM. Like, I used to get really excited by quality stuff, which all of my colleagues would have thought I was just crazy. But I remember when I bumped into an old colleague who I was team leader of once, a few years back, and she went, my first question to her was, how can we make her soar? And, as SOAR. And and I was probably thinking of being a good clinician and a good health professional, but she took it from her whole person. And she told me, out of that and the challenges we set, she's been able to travel the world, do a whole lot of awesome things around mainly her personal interests. But what really gets me excited is seeing the staff that I work with soar. So seeing them do the best that they can. Seeing, walking in there and, having a whole lot of people wave and sort of going, hey, I had this problem, but I solved it. And it's so much easier now. That's what gets me going. I've got a few clients that send me texts and send me photos of, hey, we've done this and this is how it looks like, or this is the outcome. That's what, you're driving 3 or 4 hours, and when you stop and have a look at text, that's what gets, when you can
Yeah,
make
yeah.
those simple enablement, enabling the people and seeing the smiles on their faces, that's what makes me turn up the next time.
It's really rewarding, isn't it?
Yeah. They've had
Well,
those shackles on, but now they're sort of just going, hey, we can do all of this kind of stuff. And the bosses, how many times have you walked in when that happened, and you've had one plan in your mind and they've done, and you go and find out what they've done, and they've done X, Y, Z, ABC, and you've gone, well, I was actually just going to work on Y, Z, but you've taken off. Awesome.
yeah, yeah. Seeing people grow and what's the word I'm looking for? Like a concert pianist when they make stuff up, riffing, I think they call it. Riffing off of whatever you taught them. I find it super rewarding.
Yeah.
Well, Rob, it's been a pleasure having you on a quality podcast today and catching up on the Southern Hemisphere on the other side of the world, the wonders of
Yes.
modern technology. But we do consider you a friend of a quality podcast, and we see that what you're doing and your values are closely aligned with ours. So we're really happy that you could come on the show. Thank you.
No, it's been a pleasure. It's always good to talk about this stuff and just chat to other people, because there's a few lean people in New Zealand, but not huge amounts. So it's always good just a benchmark of what's happening around the rest of the world, really.
Ladies and gentlemen, Rob Bull Plexus Consulting. We'll put all of your links down below in the show notes for all of you out there in YouTube land and around the world. Thank you for joining. Goodbye.
See you later.